So in this garden, there was a frog named George and a worm named Hermy. And Hermy and George were friends. And one day he comes into the garden, and this is the size Hermy is. But the next day he comes in the garden, Hermy is not this big, but he's this big. And George says, "Hermy, what happened?" He goes, "I ate my sister." "Oh no, Hermy, you're not supposed to eat your sister. Bad, 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 Hermy. Don't do it again." "I won't, I promise, I won't." So the next day, when George came into the garden, Hermy wasn't this big, but this big.
Ooh.
And he said, "Hermy, what happened?" And he goes, "I ate my brother." And he goes, "Hermy, shame, shame, shame on you. You can't eat your brother. You know better than that." "I'm sorry. I won't do it again. I promise." So the next day he comes into the garden, and Hermy isn't this big, but he's this big.
Oh.
And he says, "Hermy, what did you do?" He said, "I ate my mama." He goes, "Hermy, you can't do that," George says. "That's bad, 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 bad." And he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. I won't do it again. I promise." And the next day, George comes into the garden. Instead of being this big, he was this big.
Hermy.
And he goes, "What did you do?" "I ate my daddy." He goes, "Hermy, shame, 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 shame on you." And he said, "What did you do?" He goes, "Oh, you should never do that." "I'm sorry," he says. "I'll never, never, never do it again."
Yes, because he already did it.
And then the next day, when George comes into the garden, instead of Hermy being this big, he's this big. And he said, "Hermy, what happened?" And he said, "George, I burped."
Burped in, all them people.
And they came all out.
They all came out.
You can stop recording.